And thank you for joining for Brooklyn for Pieces program tonight. We're so glad that everyone's here in person and online at Zoom. We appreciate your attendance. We're here to discuss Karen Malpede's memoir, Last Radiance, Radical Lives, Bright Deaths, a journey through the pacifist avant-garde from the 1960s to today. And she'll be in conversation with Rita Charon of Narrative Medicine at Columbia University. I'm Diana Suri, the Program and Events Coordinator for Brooklyn for Peace. Before we begin, we do like to start with a moment of grounding and acknowledge that we stand on the land of the Lenape people, who have cared for this land for centuries before they were violently displaced. And with Indigenous Peoples Day just last month, we are reminded that we must have land acknowledgement beyond a specific day and just beyond our words. It needs to be expressed through ongoing commitment to truth, justice, and solidarity. So let us honor the Lenape people, their past, their presence, and their enduring presence. So Brooklyn for Peace was founded in 1984. So the organization has been doing work for 41 years now, working to prevent war and challenge the social, racial, environmental, and economic injustices that fuel violence. Thanks to everybody's support, all of our members, volunteers, people just come to our programs. Every one of you, we've been able to sustain for those 41 years, and we're very grateful for that. And in that spirit, we've been making this known from all corners of New York that we're having our annual Pathmakers to Peace Gala. It is a fundraiser to help sustain our work and our staff and future staff. It'll be on Thursday, December 4th, and we're very excited about our honorees this year. We hope that everybody can come because it's going to continue to help our really important work, fund programs like tonight's. We are honoring Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez of Congressional District 7. We're also honoring human rights and peace activist and justice activist Mahmoud Khalil. We're also having Palestinian American organizer Iman Rashid. She's done a lot of great programs with Brooklyn for Peace and like groups. And then we're also honoring 3 neighborhood-based groups. The first is New York 10 for Palestine, New York 8 for a Gaza ceasefire, and 139 for Palestine. We hope that you all can join us, spread the word. There's actually a QR code that you can scan for more information on tickets, on sponsorships and ads, so we would love for everybody to be there. But now back to tonight's program. We are so excited to have Karen here with Rita. Karen is the author and often director of 22 plays exploring pacifist and ecofeminist themes. Together with actor, director, and producer George Bartunieff, she co-founded the Obie-winning Theater 3 Collaborative in 1995. She's the author of Last Radiance, Radical Lives, Bright Deaths, as well as 4 by Malpede Plus an Intervention, and Plays in Time, The Beekeeper's Daughter, Prophecy, Another Life, and Extreme Weather. She's also edited Acts of War, Iraq and Afghanistan in 7 plays. We'd also like to thank our co-sponsors tonight who helped us put this program on, and that's the Peace and Social Action Committee of the Brooklyn Monthly Meeting, as well as Physicians for a National Health Program, NY New York Metro. And now let's begin. Please help me in welcoming Karen Malpede and Rita Charon.
What might not have come across in the extensive list already of Karen's publications. Can you hear this way? Okay, we got to get even closer. And you too. Bring it close to you. What I want you to know before we begin is the force of nature that Karen Malpede is. This is not your ordinary playwright. This is a person who invented an age. When I started to read the book, it felt to me like I was reading something like Kerouac's On the Road. It was like the beginning of some major, like, tectonic movement in not just radical politics, but radical politics, feminism, radical art. And her whole journey, including the losses. I don't know how many of you have seen the book, but we hear in the book about many of the very close lovers, companions, colleagues in activism and in making things happen. And she was a powerhouse in all of this that we're seeing here in this book, which is in large part memoir, but is much more powerfully memoir of a whole time, and a time that needed her, that needed her. I'm going to read you, this was from a review in the Chicago Review. I'm just going to read a paragraph, and then Karen will read from the book. We've kind of chosen several of the bits to read, and then we want to stop and let you all have a chance to ask questions. But just listen to this. Her scenes unfold like performances. Dialogue, gesture, lighting, silence, all orchestrated with the playwright's precision. Even when she writes about loss, particularly the death of her longtime partner, actor George Bartenieff, the prose doesn't wallow. Instead, it hums with luminosity, a word she returns to again and again. Each chapter crescendos toward transcendence, as if it were the only antidote to death is radical attentiveness to life. So finally, because in part this evening is brought to you by PNHP, which is the Physicians for National Health Plan. I'm a doctor, I'm an internist. Ollie Fine, right there, hired me for my first job in 1981. And the very end of this book is a no holds barred attack on some of the worst among physicians. And we have much to learn from what Karen has experienced as helping to care for George and many others in their illnesses. Karen says this is a book about cancer. It is that, and it is much more. So, Karen, let us hear some of what you've written.
Thanks so much, Rita. Can you hear me? Yes? Okay. I'm going to start at the very end of the book, and not with my words, but with Noam Chomsky's words. Noam was a friend of mine from 1973 until he lost the power of speech and we could no longer communicate by email. But while George was in hospital, I asked him how his wife, Carol, died, his first wife. And he had been married to Carol since they were children. They grew up together. And so this is what he wrote me. Carol's cancer was a shock. I urged her to see her doctor because of a persistent cough. They did a chest x-ray and sent her right off for a biopsy. Malignant, then MRIs all over her brain. I checked carefully with specialists, some of whom I knew well. All agreed that radical brain radiation was imperative. It was untreatable by any known means. So she was put on an experimental drug that was just in the trial stage. It kept her alive for 2 years, to everyone's surprise. 2 years of steady decline to infancy. Also slow collapse of bodily organs. I wanted to keep her at home. Managed until the end, with occasional stays in the cancer ward at MGH. After a few months, I needed some help. Near the end, 24 a day visiting nurses, amazingly wonderful people. It was hard, but I'm glad we did it that way. After the first few months, she didn't really understand what was happening and was often quite happy, like a little child. Liked for me to read her children's books, and since her short-term memory was gone, she's the same ones over and over. And to look, it's a little dark here, and to look at old family photos also over and over, oddly, very warm and intimate days to the very end. She died peacefully at home, children nearby. And when Noam heard that George had died and Noam had seen him act and they were mutual admirers of one another, he wrote me a month later when Noam heard George died at home. He wrote, "So sad. The best way, though, stay strong." And yeah. So this is also a book about how extraordinary people died, and a book about sort of wrenching death out of the hands of an impersonal, beeping, sterilized situation, and making it very personal and meaningful, both for the person who is dying, who calls the shots, and for those who love that person, who get to stand at his bedside. And a couple people in the room, Beatrice and Johan, were there when George was dying at home, and had known him for many, many years, and took part in that really oddly intimate and joyous week, 10 days we had with him. Yeah, so the other people whose deaths are chronicled in the book, and I'll go back to them in the more beginning, are two great pacifist anarchist artists. One is Barbara Deming, fantastic lesbian, feminist, poet, writer, activist, freedom rider, wrote a book called Prison Notes, spent a month in prison in the South. It's about her last arrest. And Julian Beck, who is a dear, dear friend of mine, whose life and death I was intimately involved with. So we can go, from there. Where should I go? To
Julian and Barbara.
Okay, let me go to Julian and Barbara.
But do you see what Karen is already putting in action here? In a retrospect, and now we're going to go backwards, but it is the actual living through the loss, and how those who live through the loss with the person doing the dying are necessary.
Mm-hmm. This comes out in the book, but I'm not going to read that paragraph right now, but George said to me many times, "I am afraid of dying." And I said to him many times the only thing I could promise, which was, "You will not be alone."
Yeah.
Okay, so in 1984, there was a women's peace encampment at Seneca Falls, and we were trying to prevent the nuclear missiles from being sent to Europe. So we were camped outside a nuclear base on land that we had bought, so we could stay there in our tents. But during the day, we went and talked to the young soldiers who were guarding the nukes, and hung out with them and danced and wove the doors shut, the gates shut with yarn, and did our thing. And then we decided to march from the encampment to Seneca Falls in a march to honor the women's 1848. Is that it? The Declaration of Humanity for Women. And so we were walking through this town called Waterloo, and we were crossing a bridge, and we were met with about 100 or so armed citizens, male, wearing T-shirts with hunting rifles. It was before the AR-47 or the AK, whatever it's called. They were all armed, though. They had guns. and they stopped us in the middle of the bridge, and we sat down. I was with my 4-year-old, and we had been told that women who had their children with them, the children would be taken away and put into good Christian homes in the, to be raised properly. And so I took my child off the bridge, out of harm's way, and into the crowd, and she was wearing a red, white, and blue striped bathing suit. So, but these men sat, they didn't sit down, they were pointing the guns at the women, and the women had to decide what to do. Ultimately, the women were all arrested, the men went home, and the women were put in prison for a week, and then, put on some kind of crazy trial and release, as happens to us all the time. Barbara was dying at the time. She had terminal cancer. This was her last arrest. So I'm going to read what she says when she gets out of prison, and then I'll read a little bit more about her. Barbara was very tall and willowy, and she had a very quiet voice, but she was strong like a tree in the, that could bend with the, okay. In a video interview Barbara gave shortly after her release, 1 week after her arrest, she remembers the scene on the bridge. "Go home, commies. Go home, Jews. Nuke the lezies," were the chants of the armed men. This is her quote from her. "They perceived very accurately we were a threat to patriarchy." She leaned forward and said in her voice like a whisper, "On the bridge, seated in their circle, the women discussed what to do. They came to a collective decision not to leave the bridge, but to allow themselves to be arrested. What gave me so much hope for the future," Barbara says, "was this way of slowing down time." Witnessed by the men on the bridge and then by their jailers, a commitment to deliberation maintained even in their schoolhouse prison, so that each woman had a chance to speak and be heard. In this way, reminiscent of a Quaker meeting, here we are, the entire group could think things through. Early one morning, 2 women made a jailbreak from the school, climbing out through a window. The other 53 prisoners were marched into the cold halls and threatened with being strip searched. The guards made a show of pulling on rubber gloves. "Do you think you will find the missing women in our vaginas?" a woman had the wit to ask. "What thrilled me," Barbara repeats, both about the debate on the bridge and later the earnest discussions in the school-turned-jail, is how, quote, "as the police observed it, I could see them begin to respect it." This slowness, this shared deliberation that took everyone's voice into account was at the heart of Barbara's view of nonviolent action. Nonviolence is androgynous, Barbara liked to point out, a word much in favor among us at that time before they and them pronouns became used to denote much the same thing, a mix of female and male attributes, a nurturant strength. I'm going to skip now to Julian was aghast when he learned of I introduced Julian and Barbara. They both had terminal cancer. They both had very different relationships to it, and extraordinary relationships. They were very similar. They were both tall, willowy, incredibly powerful people. Barbara with this tiny little voice, and Julian with this booming voice. And they got along immediately. And they stayed in phone contact until Barbara died. And then, okay, so this is Julian. Julian was aghast when he learned of Barbara's decision to stop cancer treatment and begin her, what she called, dance toward death. Yep. He was dying too, but his way was different. Though they each approached their deaths with eyes open, with concern not just for themselves, but for all who loved them. Each evening, the women would gather. Barbara had a commune in Florida that she funded. It's still there. Each evening, the women would gather drumming and singing, while Barbara, naked and ever weaker, would dance in the middle of their circle. They played and sang music from the civil rights movement, Aretha Franklin, the nightly ritual bringing Barbara closer to the inevitable, dancing naked, surrounded by a circle of love. On August 2nd, 1984, Barbara died in her sleep. Carl Bissinger called to tell me. Those of us who were not with her in Florida would receive a parting letter typed on her typewriter on the thin yellow student composition paper Barbara always used, dated July 21st. Mine arrived after Barbara's death, sent to me by her bereaved lover, Jane Gapin, in response to my condolence note. This is Barbara's letter to all of us. To so many of you. I have loved my life so very much, and I have loved you so very much, and felt so blessed at the love you have given me. I love the work so many of us have been trying to do together, and had looked forward to continuing this work, but I just feel no more strength in me now, and I want to die. I won't leave you when I die. I won't lose you when I die, and I won't leave you when I die. Some of you I have most especially loved and felt beloved by, and I hope you know that even though I haven't had the strength lately to reach out to you. I love you. Hallowed be. May all be made whole. I want you to know, too, that I die happily. Bobby, Barbara Deming.
Wow. Any of you have some thoughts that you want to share? This is so powerful, what you're giving us. Where do your thoughts go? Please.
Well, Barbara, Julian, and George were people who paid attention. When you were in their presence, you were in their presence. They were taking you in, they were looking you in the eye, they were admiring who you were, and you felt seen. So, and of course, attention in the theater is key, but attention in life is also key.
Yeah. It's certainly key in the kind of medicine that we've been trying to promulgate, which is called narrative medicine, which means very specifically the heightened attention that the patient deserves, and the family members and the colleagues, and even, of course, the self. And I think we see in the course of this work that Karen pays attention to herself as well. You get the dog, you do the things that are important for yourself. But indeed, it is that shift from the self-absorption, which rather dominates today, into, and it's not a passivity, it's a highly, highly active form of being with. Yeah.
So I must say the whole book is about also all the work we did together and all the theater work, and it's about a lot more than just the dying, but that's what I'm focusing on today. So I'm going to skip to Julian. I met Judith and Julian when I had just written my first book. That story is told in the book. In this book, we became family instantly. There was no question about it, and we stayed family until Judith died in 2015, right, Cindy? Yeah. Julian died in 1985. It was silent and still when I opened the door to his Mount Sinai hospital room, which was usually crowded with friends, hangers-on, old company members, poets, musicians. Judith would be telling stories from her chair next to Julian's bed, stoned. The sounds of chants and laughter song. Julian sitting up in the middle of it, in the center of it all, his beatific smile on his wan face. But now he lay alone, curled in a chrysalis about to change form, in the hospital bed, the bars up, a crib, his long form dissolved into a series of yellow gold circles, like one of his abstract expressionist paintings. knees into chin, arms looped about spindly legs, feet fallen at sharp angles, head on stretched neck, bent to the side, eyes closed. He did not know I had come. I reached down to touch some part of him, a bony shoulder, a limb. Whither thou goest, I will go. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God, I whispered. A sudden sharp turn of the head, a bright, angry eyes staring up, a voice not quite his, but from the deep. I am not going to die, he hissed. He had a gorgeous full voice, the voice of a man in command. These words were barely audible, but enraged, quite clear. I said nothing more. I removed my hand from his fragile flesh, took a step back. I stayed at his bed. This is May 14th, 1984. Yesterday, Allen Ginsberg and I visit Julian at the same time. When Allen tells Julian to let go, tells him that when his father died, Rinpoche, his guru, told Allen, just let go of him. And that when he did so, he felt immensely better. Julian replies, sitting straight in his hospital bed, but you don't understand. It's me I would have to let go of. And I'm not ready to do that. Allen has no response. He says his goodbye. Later, as I leave his hospital room, Julian whispers, it's going to be all right.
So who's taking care of whom?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the attention goes in both ways, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And it is the case that patients often feel that they have to take care of us. Oh, I wasn't going to say that. That would have made the... So...
Yeah. So this is last Seder. We had big Seders every year with Judith's Feminist Haggadah. 1985, last Seder. The room is full as always at Passover. The extended family of the Living Theater, company members and friends, Judith and Julian sit together on the couch at the head of our improvised long winding circle. We sit on the floor at low tables, which are made of long pieces of board set on milk crates, over which tablecloths have been draped. We read from Judith's Feminist Haggadah for the Seder. Then Julian goes around the entire room saying each person's name. Right. Holy Garrick, Holy Isha, Holy Amber, Holy Carrie Sophia. He smiles into each person's eyes, holy each one of us in turn. It takes a long time. There must be 50 people or more. He does not forget a single name. August 1985. This is a month before he died. Julian sits in the bath sucking on ice cream at home and at West End, sucking on ice cream from a bowl he holds, a spoonful at a time until it melts in his mouth, the door ajar. In the adjoining room, Judith sits at her small writing desk, Hannon and I on the big bed. The talk turns to Martin Buber. Judith and Julian heard him speak in 1959. She reads from her diary. Her voice vibrant, her words and Buber's intertwined, filling the rooms, catching us up in their spell. It was to have been a holy place, Buber says of Israel, a place where the most holy went. It was to have been an experiment in living, and that necessarily meant community among Jews and Palestinians. But then the war happened, and after the war, the most wretched came to Israel. Those who had been most badly hurt, those who had lost everything, who were weakened by cruelty, by hate. Judith's voice breaks, and Buber's, but she picks up again, about his sadness on that night, about the loss of hope violence always brings. Her words are beautiful, and her voice, though their content is only despair. When she is finished, Julian, naked and beaming, comes into the room. That was a zap, he says, ruddy from the bath and aglow with delight in the moment. He settles himself cross-legged on the bed. That's so Julian. This is an interview he gave, not to me, but to somebody who came to interview him just 2 weeks before he died, and then I'll stop. This is the last I'll read from Julian. I've always been a lover. I love people. I love to embrace and to hug. I love sensuality. After I found out I had cancer, I felt tremendously inhibited, suddenly. But now I am able to express more in the house, in the family, and with friends. I sense a much greater openness than ever before. Many people don't realize how important family and other means of support actually are to the person who is ill. I really hope the importance of home-based support can be proven in a scientific way.
What is this wisdom we are hearing? What, I don't know, I just want to leave a little time for you all to think this through, please.
I'm a millennial writer myself, so I know Karen. We met a while ago, but I have not had a lot of exposure to authors from the past, especially nonfiction writers, even in my MFA program. So I very much agree that this book is not just a book about cancer, but it's kind of revolutionary in my opinion, because it gives so much insight into a time that is, and people that are so crucial to the time that it took place. So I have a question for both of you. I'm familiar with the narrative medicine program, and my work also deals with health and creative writing. So in teaching writing, they teach us to tie your personal with the political or with the culture at large. And I'm curious how this, when you teach writing from narrative medicine, how you extrapolate your personal into the rest of the culture. And Karen, did you know that you were writing such a phenomenal book?
Start there.
Nesta, who's sitting over there, called me every night. She knew Barbara better than I did. And is actually writing Barbara's biography. So Nesta knew how I was in the months after George died, which was a complete and utter wreck. Shaking and trembling and shrieking and yelling and losing weight and not sleeping and then falling asleep like I was dead and waking up. And I had my puppy with me growing up and all of that. But I kept writing through all of it because it's the only thing I knew how to do, actually. And so I wrote the first draft of this book, which is quite different than the published book, in the throes of that grief, which, lasted, I mean, grief doesn't end, first of all. You don't get over it, nor should you, but your body accommodates it in a different way. So the shrieking, the yelling, the sleeplessness, the walking in miles with friends who would walk with me, with my little dog, miles, because I couldn't do anything else. Charlotte and Ollie know this. They picked me up off the floor one day, and that was the whole adventure that's in this book, right? So people came to me. I mean, this is also the story of post-death, how, people came to me at crucial moments, and I was very lucky, but it didn't help me get over it. I couldn't behave for anyone, and I could only be around the people who would allow me not to behave.
Yes.
And then slowly, I finished, you put it, you accommodate it in a different way.
She writes on page 179, grief exists beyond language. And this is what we're hearing right now. To answer your question about the writing that we do in narrative medicine, our task through the training program anyway is to unlock person's writing. They don't come to us to get an MFA. They come to us to learn something about how to be a healer, how to bring a a respect for language so that they can understand what patients tell them. Most of them are on their way to medical training or nursing training or social work training. And so our task, unlike the one that you described, is to alert people that they have a voice. And so a lot of it is kind of experiments to jolt them into writing. And so we will read a paragraph, we'll read a poem, we'll read a haiku, and encourage persons to find some words for what it is that they're imagining here. And then we'll give them a prompt of some kind, but not a write about when you were in first year medical school and you saw a patient who died. None of that stuff, none of that stuff. But rather, prompts that simply allow a mind to find words. And we say, write it down. We give them 3 minutes, write it down. And that's gradually how they come to understand they have a voice. So I'm not teaching anybody how to be a journalist, but rather I'm assuring persons that they have a voice and that the words that come to them matter. So this is
So
what,
great. That's
this
so
is what we're
great, because
hearing.
then they know other people have a voice too. And they, yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's fantastic feel. I mean, it's really what's so needed, so needed.
What we live through, if you read kind of cover to cover, what we live through chapter 4, which is George. Chapter 4 is the heart of the book. And it's important that we have seen Karen live through the illnesses, and they're all cancer, of her dear friends, lovers, intimates. But it's when we're reading the days and months of George Bakhtianev that we understand the depth of this woman. Please.
No, I was just going to say his depth also. I was very lucky to live with him for 35 years.
Yeah, yeah. But his is the lens that helps us understand the magnitude of grief as lived by Karen. And yes, some of it is in the throes, and some of us were with Karen at that time, in the throes, that she was able to sit here and read from her book tells something about recovery. Can I use that word?
Yeah, I think you could. I mean, what I think is that grief is love. And so it changes, like love changes. And you learn how to hold the grief in a more loving way towards yourself, actually, than you could when it was so, yeah.
She also writes a little bit later on about the beauty of our sorrow. The beauty of our sorrow. Do you remember that phrase?
Yeah, I do remember the phrase. Do you know where it comes from? I mean, somewhere in there.
It's page
Yeah.
212 is where
Page
it comes from.
212, okay.
The beauty.
Yeah. I just flashed on all the people we've seen when we can get them, certainly on Democracy Now! And other news, from Gaza, who are living through such unimaginable
Yes.
loss of everything.
There's nothing.
And still are so human.
Yes.
So beautiful, so articulate in their, and that nobody has ever, been able to interview people in the throes of genocide. The genocides that we know of, we found out afterwards, they were over the camps were liberated, right? Now we're seeing it as it continues on, and we are seeing this extraordinary humanity among the Gazan people, the Palestinian people. Yeah.
Yeah. And yet Karen was learning all along how to do this. I'm reminded of your description of, this is the 60s. She says, we were idealists, opposed to the Vietnam War, and we came together. We were pacifists, and we put our bodies on the line. So within the activism, whether it's Gaza, whether it's the Vietnam War, whether it's the next war to come, there's this personal responsibility, like your women on the bridge, like your women on the bridge. Where does that come from?
I don't know, I'm not answering your question, maybe I will be. I don't know if it has an answer, but I'm going to segue. This is also a book about sex. It was the 60s, and we had a lot of sex, and we had a lot of good sex, and a lot of bad sex, but we had a lot of sex. And so that, runs through the book. The first chapter is my father, who died of cancer when I was 19, and the very complex, difficult person he was, and how that sort of prepared me not only to write the play Us, in which I met George many years later, but also to prepared me to want to do death a different way, because he was nuked. He was diagnosed with terminal cancer. He's 42. His primary care physician said, it's terminal. I'm going to tell him to get his affairs in order and get ready to die. And my mother took him to Billings, which is like Memorial Sloan Kettering of Chicago. And they nuked the shit out of him for 2 years. Until the last time I saw him, he didn't recognize me because his brain was actually gone, Cancer treatment is slightly less brutal now, Then it was just, there was no targeting, there were no immunotherapies, there was just this radiation and nukes, whatever. And I came to feel that because he was afraid of dying and he was so young, and my mother was so young, he was 44 when he died, she was 42, that they got trapped in this medical thing. We were taught, Dr. von Prohaska was his name, and we were taught to regard him very much as a god. And whatever he wanted to do to my father, he did. And I came away thinking, that is torture. It should never happen like this. And then, so every time I met cancer, and we all meet, 1 in 3 people have cancer, right? So we know people, we're not cancer-free. None of us is cancer-free. We're surrounded by it. So, what do we do with that? And obviously we know it's pollution, it's plastics, it's what same thing that's killing the planet is killing us, and that treatment is one part of it. Rachel Carson, this is in the book, died of breast cancer while she was writing Silent Spring while she was dying of breast cancer. She never says that she has breast cancer, but she has a paragraph that says, the importance of prevention, which is what she's writing about. Get the chemicals out of the air, get the carbon out, get the fossil fuels, leave them in the ground, et cetera. And she was viciously attacked while she was dying for writing the book, for writing Silent Spring.
So the last part of the book is a unsheathed critique attack on what we call mainstream medicine. She says, doctors are not good at dealing with death. Well, what are they supposed to be for? And yet it's true. You know that once palliative care became a specialty, which was not so long ago, it was like within the past 30 years, many of our colleagues were thrilled because somebody else would take care of the dying. And it was like contracting death out to somebody else. You take care of them when they're dying. So it's a strange calculus where medicine might be attracting persons who are allergic to death. And we have to, I don't know how many of you here are in health professions. I'm assuming that some of you would be because of the PNHP sponsorship, but it may not be the case. We've heard from a few of you, but you're all the writers who are talking. Um, but we're in a very dangerous situation where the persons who are trained to be caring for persons seriously ill don't accept or don't know how to go the last
Yeah,
mile.
George's cancer doctor said to Nesta at George's funeral as they were following George's casket to the crematorium, which I couldn't do. I was on the other side of the street. George died in my arms at home.
Yeah.
And it's quite an amazing story. And his last words are, you have to buy the book. But George's doctor said to Nesta, "I feel I have failed." You failed? I mean, who are you, God? You know, you failed? It was a very bizarre thing to say. He said other bizarre things too, but we won't again, you have to read the book. I do want to read a little bit about George.
Yes,
not
please.
not really the end of his life, but how he acted.
The owl.
Yeah,
Will
the
you
owl.
read the
Yeah,
owl?
the owl. Yeah. I'm gonna find the owl.
Yes, Nesta?
What? Oh, he's not named.
No.
So you can just call him Doctor. Harry is his first name, yeah.
He was full of kind of consternation, and pain and all of that. And I can't even remember how the conversation started. It was when Karen had disappeared and we were following, the casket to the crematorium. And what he meant, what he was saying was that he felt he had failed was because George had died, And I mean, it had been known, and George went a long time, declining. It was known that the only thing there was to do was to help him die.
Yes,
Yes. That's what there was to do. And that, yeah, but that was what he couldn't do. He couldn't let go. And he was like he had a toolbox.
Let her finish.
He had a toolbox that could add certain things, and he desperately wanted to help out of his heart as well as his sense of professional duty, all of it. But this was all he had to work with, and that there was some way that he was being led, or inevitably the world, life, carried him toward failure. There was I don't know, Rita, if this is how doctors feel, but that, and I know they feel differently, different ones, but that he somehow had fought against this, fought and fought, and in the process over-treated and made certain things about how, about George's capacity or need or what he needed in the dying. He made those things harder. It was like he was with Karen, but he was also at cross purposes with Karen, and George was kind of melding the both of them.
Yes.
And, the non-acknowledgement that was even that was something to know, that was something to give, to love him unto death and to even accompany him.
Yes.
Rather than try to save it, stop it,
Yes.
So that was sort of.
So what we see is that many of our colleagues, and this is not just doctors, I mean the whole doctors, nurses, social workers, psychotherapists, occupational therapists, dentists, I mean those in the world whose duty is to be with the ill, and certainly to be with the healthy who want to stay healthy. And yet, amazing to discover how little they know about paying attention. And we teach such simple things, you know, about, I teach my students to move their chair away from the computer. Don't write down anything as you're meeting a new patient. Put your hands in your lap. Say to the patient, I will be your doctor, and I need to know a great deal about your body and your health and your life. Please tell me what you think I should know about you. And it seems like a very unusual question to ask, but isn't that the right question? You are the expert. I am here at your service. What should I know about your body, your health, or your life that will help me care for you? And when I ask those questions, I learn the most amazing things, and it has nothing to do typically with aches or pains or my kidney did this or no, it's the fire in our house when I was 7 years old, or it's the nightmares I've been having since my brother died. I mean, it's that kind of deep, seminal, this is who I am now, you know? But the strange, shocking thing is that so many of our healthcare practitioners don't know how to do that. And that is what we're working toward.
Yeah, and I will say in the defense of George's doctor, because he's a human being and he's a mixed bag, as we all are. George was a hidden child in Nazi Germany. And as he became, as it was clear that he was dying, George died at 89 and a half. As he became sicker, and he became more fascinated with his life as a hidden child in Nazi Germany. And he wanted to tell everybody about it, and he wanted to write about it. And when he died, I tried to finish that task and really talk about what happened to him. But Perry spent 4 hours over 2 days. George was in a wheelchair. He was away from his computer. He was looking eye to eye because they were both sitting down, and he let George talk and tell him the whole story of his hidden child life in Germany. And I stood in the back of the room just witnessing this. And that was doctoring to me. And that is in the book too. So, you know, it's a mixed bag, yeah. But I also will say we got this puppy who came to us. He was eight weeks old when George was dying, and the puppy immediately knew what to do. He wanted to be next to George in the bed. He wanted to lick his cheek. He then wanted to go away, and then he wanted to come back and be there some more when it was time. If George was up, one day he was up writing in his diary, and the puppy was right at his feet, as he is when I write, you know. So, I mean, this is something that is in us. We're animals too, you know, but it's been kind of bred out of us, you know.
Why don't we hear the owl?
And Page, because I'm having trouble finding the owl.
I don't think so.
I have the Blue Valiant story. Oh, here we go.
But let's hear this description of George's acting, and then we'll open the floor.
Yeah. I think this is it. Let me see. Yeah, I come back and forth. The book is not written in a linear fashion at all, so it circles around things.
No,
so,
but that's the amazement of it, that it is purely associative on the bus. It's on the bus, and that's because of her own capacity to be living these many, many times at once.
yeah, and I wrote 10 plays for George as we lived together. So George was an amazing actor. People who've seen him act will attest to that. An extraordinary actor. And I could have him do anything, because he could do anything. So this is when I turned him into an owl. But it starts with the doctor. 10 years is the median survival, his cancer doctor told us, exaggerating the good as he delivered the bad news. Then, 87, you look 77. We laughed. 10 years from this day, George would be 97. We created this, we treated his fatal multiple myeloma diagnosis as a far-off ending. And I promised many times, not knowing what else I had to give, you will not be alone. You will not be abandoned again, because his parents left him in Nazi Germany. So he was abandoned. This pledge was of singular importance to me. I had dutifully left the room at the nurse's behest moments before my father died, and regretted it ever since. I had been away doing a play when Julian suffered his fatal hemorrhage in Mount Sinai Hospital. I would remake myself too if I could do as he said, and I promised myself George would die at home in my arms. So he became an owl in front of us. This is the end of my play, other than we. So he became an owl in front of us, the bird of wisdom. He seemed to take flight. It was my way too, I suppose, of preparing us both through the art that we made for his impending death. This was both unconscious and not. I never said it out loud, though I knew he would leave his physical form and become, we knew not when or what. It's called acting, of course, the ability to go beyond who one is. And George was particularly good at changing species and shape, at imagining something else out of this world to be reborn into. The man weakened by cancer, drugs, and disease seemed to swoop and rise through a sparkling sky we also saw in our mind's eye. Magical low-budget lighting by Tony Giovanetti. The stronger the imagination, the more convincing the actor. The more the actor sees, so we see. The actor, by seeing in his mind's eye, extends our imaginations. His interior landscape materialized, the inner world of an owl, overcoming the actual physical limitations, including his age and his illness, plus the fact that he could not fly. Nevertheless, we saw him grow wings and appear to sweep through the sky. We saw with his eyes, strangely. It felt as if we were inside of him looking out and taking flight too. This was a magic he worked to his final day on Earth. George always seemed to be more vibrant, more alive than the facts of his increasingly limited strength, his loss of hearing and sight. He compromised with the force of his will, vision mixed with desire, presenting a vibrancy that came from within, a power that withstood and could not have come from weakening flesh and muscle, yet did. First, he transmutes into owl. He looks at the world he is leaving, as a human that is, with a sorrowful wonder. Then he becomes amazed at what is happening. As he grows feathers and wings, he had a costume that transformed. It's described on the previous page. Anyway, as he grew feathers and wings, and then he assumes the point of view of the bird and looks out from the owl's eyes, the human disappears as he appears to take wing with full power. The audience followed his gaze, saw him transform, watched him seeing into another world, the world beyond, where I suppose he is now, if there is such a place, separate from human imagination and wish. It goes on, but I'll stop there.
Do you see? Please, we're opening the floor. What have you heard here that you will carry with you?
What a beautiful passage, Karen, the owl. The Sufis say the stronger the imagination, the less imaginary it becomes. Saul Rubinek in his current show, playing Shylock, talks about how his father's joined the Yiddish theater and comes home to his Orthodox father. And of course, you mentioned Martin Buber, who wrote a great deal about the theater before he entered what Bertrand Russell calls that no man's land of philosophy. So you used the word God twice and talked about the seders you attended all those years. Would you talk a little bit about, I don't even know how to ask this part of the question, so please riff. Well, yes, Judaism. Okay, so in terms of your youth and your history in Judaism and all those feminist seders?
So I was raised my mother came from the most secular Jewish family you could imagine. I never heard the word Passover in my house. I never heard the word Shabbos. We got together every Friday night and she would cook. The whole family would get together, but she served shrimp cocktail and, there was no religion whatsoever. Their religion was the New Deal. My great-grandfather was an operative in the Chicago Democratic Party. He ran the Loop, which is this, business part of Chicago. And when in his later age, he became a bookie in City Hall. And he was arrested, and the judge said, Joe, because he knew him, you have to go live with your daughter in Florida, or I'm going to put you in jail. And so he moved to his daughter in Florida and died very soon after that. I remember him. My father was from an incredibly religious Catholic family. And they hated us because we were not baptized. My father allowed my mother to have her way and not baptize us. And after he died, they threw us out of the family, and I never saw my Italian family again. My father went back to the church. I used to go to midnight mass with him. I was never in a synagogue as a child, but I was in a Catholic church for midnight mass with my father because I wanted to accompany him. Judith is the daughter of a rabbi. Julian came from a much more sort of secular, upper middle class Jewish family, but they introduced me to Judaism. And I suppose, there's a scene in the book where I go to shul with Judith after Julian dies, and it's Shlomo Karlebach's Orthodox shul, blah, blah, blah. I never went back to shul after that. I'm not a religious person. I don't believe in God. I believe in love and nature and art and humans. I can't bring myself to think. People say, oh, a Jewish social worker, much younger than I, when I was, looking for some help of some kind, she said to me, you're going to see him again, don't you? And I really wanted to break the computer in her face, So this book is a book also of wrestling with faith and no faith, and what do we have faith in, and what allows us to love. And I think if I believe in anything, I believe in love. I believe in love.
This, I think, what you just said ties in a bit with I was feeling when you said that grief is love. I know that grief is also anger, and I think you were just expressing that. Yeah. If you wanted to talk more about that, I say the book is there.
Yeah, I used to get so angry when people would tell me I was angry. I would fly off the handle. Yeah, you're right. Grief is anger. Of course, it's anger. Yeah.
So I can't wait to dive into this book. Of course, I feel very connected to it. Because I was with Karen before George passed, and of course after, to some degree when I could be there. One thing I wanted to say, somewhat in response to what you were asking and how you were responding, is that I know Karen so deeply through her plays and through George performing these extraordinary transformational roles, like amazing journeys that she created, that he went so far and fully in. But one of the things I wanted to say about the plays, I don't know how many people here know the plays, but not everybody, is that they feel spiritual to me, very, very much. And also, you as a human feel so connected to ritual, which to me is so much a part of a practice. So I felt like I had to just say that because that's how I know you and how I feel you and how I've experienced you both off and on the stage.
I think George and I are animists with nature. I mean, George loved nature beyond, and I have always had animals, horses, dogs, I couldn't live without animals. So I think, that George used to say, nature is my God. He would say that.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, since Physicians for Natural Health Program is co-sponsoring this program, which I'm very glad that they are, that one of the important things is to enable physicians to do what Rita is talking about, because I think the way the current system is structured, it's like almost impossible for physicians to be able to respond in the way that you're talking about, either for patients of any kind, whether they're dying or not. So I think it's important coming out of this to really, shall we say, redouble our efforts to try to create a health system in which this kind of healing can take place.
Yeah, I mean, the whole government was shut down over the mess of healthcare, and nothing's been resolved, right? It's going to just, no, it didn't. I mean, it caved, whatever, it's going to go on.
It hasn't been resolved, but we heard O'Connor say this morning that he was hoping out of this would come a move towards a single-payer health system.
It has
and it's
to
like
be.
really
It
important to
has
hear
to
him
be.
saying that, and I hope we can all really both think about that and work towards it. And
Because I think once doctors are freed of the burden of having to report everything to the computer, all the time, they would be freer to pay attention, And George's doctor is a very mixed bag. I mean, I would text him at any time of night when I thought there was something wrong with George, and he would diagnose whether or not we should go to the emergency room, and he would show up in the emergency room many times if he wasn't off at one of his conferences, which is a whole other story. You have to read the book for that. But but doctors are under tremendous burdens to be service, and the hospital. I would get bills for $35,000 for one infusion. I had a box of bills. They separated my finances from, we kept separate bank accounts, separate funds. So I still have a house to live in. Otherwise, I would be out on the street. He became a charity patient at the hospital. He had no money, and I threw away the bills. But I said to his doctor, does George have fatal kidney failure? This was not when he was not dying, when he was just and his doctor said, no, the hospital has an enhancement office that jacks up the diagnosis in order to charge the insurance companies more, and the insurance companies have their folks that argue back. So we're paying for all of this, which is,
It's called upcoding. Upcoding. To add to what Charlotte just said, the hazard coming very speedily down the road is the AI robot. You know that the artificial intelligence robots are now taping every doctor-patient interview, transcribing it. One can get the entire transcription of what is said, but it is up to the non-thinking AI robot to decide what of all that is said ends up in the clinical record. Do you get it? And when I asked at a medical conference to these companies who make the AI robots, how do you decide what to distill down for me to read in the chart and for every clinician who's taking care of this patient to read? The lady, she almost patted me on the head, not quite. She said, "Oh, no, no, don't worry. We take out all the chit chat." Do you see? Who stands to gain from a medical record with no chit chat? I'll tell you the answer because I know it. When I asked her, who are your advisors? Who are your medical advisors who help you develop the policies for what these AI devices are doing? She said, "Oh, well, they're mostly orthopedic surgeons." Do you see? So what's happening is a way to lie about what it is that happens in a medical conversation, to keep into the chart only the things that allow for as much upcoding as one can have. Oh, we only put things that have to do very specifically with your ICD-10 codes, which is the diagnostic codes. So only to say it's not like it's coming to an end. And it has to do with the revenue-producing, profit-making situation in a now corporatized health center. So wouldn't it be something, Charlotte, if a single payer emerges from all of this? But that's the work we all have to do.
You're making me think of the theater because my plays are only seen by a very small audience because of money, right? And I went to Broadway to see a play that was very highly touted and with a friend of mine who's seen a gazillion, and it was so terrible, you know? So the stuff, you know, same thing, capitalism is a great destroyer of, you know, what did Oppenheimer say about destroying? Anyway, he said something. I'm the great destroyer of worlds. Yeah, yeah.
I am death.
Yeah, yeah. What play? Oh, I should tell you the terrible play? I don't know why. Liberation. It's supposed to be a feminist, you know, it's dreadful. Yeah. But, so don't go, but, you know, people are flocking to it.
Yep, and I think we need to close now. I think she said.
Yeah, we
we're
can
up.
take one last question if there is,
Yeah.
but then, yeah, we should
Okay.
wrap up.
That's what I thought. Any last question? So let us take this hour and a half that we've been together, hour and 15 minutes, as a challenge. I keep looking at Charlotte because she's the one who said, maybe out of all these ashes, something good will come. But the challenge is to reclaim, we'll start with healthcare, but then we'll get to things like theater. You know, so that it's not the wealth gap that we see now. It's not the health gap that parallels the wealth gap, but rather something that just, I don't know how to put it, makes sense for us all who are trying our best to live together and stay well. We have to close, but please mill around and come and get Karen to sign your book.
Yep. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Rita. Everyone can join us down over here at the check-in where Karen, you can sign books. And if you haven't purchased her book yet, she has her book and her playwright for sale as well.